Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Brie Myself and God channel where I'm bringing you all things Brie and all things God. And I could honestly just cry from saying that. I haven't said that in months because I have just come out of one of the most challenging mental and spiritual health seasons of my recent memory. And that's what I'm here to talk to y'all about. It's like a couple days before Thanksgiving when I'm recording this, and I was supposed to be going home today to drive home to celebrate the holiday with my family, but I literally was like, I cannot leave to go home for Thanksgiving without recording a video to give thanks to my God, my waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness God, for bringing me out of what may have been the most difficult season of my pretty much adult life. The other time that I think I've gone through something as difficult as this was like 7 years ago, my sophomore year of college, and I was not really even a full adult there. But like this right here, so yeah, I just want to tell y'all like what happened, what God did, like what I was going through over the last few months that caused me to pretty much fall off of creating and fall off of just literally being myself. I want to tell y'all what happened, tell y'all what I went through and what I experienced, and where I am now, and what I believe I learned along the way that I hope can help somebody else who is going through a struggle season like the one that I might have just come out of. So without further ado, let's get to it. So where did this all start? I think where I would start this story is the fact that a couple years ago in 2019, I guess that was 3 years ago, God led me to start both my YouTube channel and my business, Successfully You Consulting. And also a year later allowed me to start a full-time job doing great work. And during the time that I first started my YouTube channel and business, I was in grad school. So I didn't really have the time to dedicate to it like I would after graduating. But after I graduated my master's program in social work and social policy, shout out to my SSA alum, U Chicago. But after my program, I started to really take things more seriously with my business, with my YouTube. I started to be more consistent. I started to create. I was getting more consistent clientele. I was leveling up my income. I was leveling up my impact through this, which is what I consider online ministry to an extent. Things were just going and going and going well. And I just felt like I was growing and leveling up in my life. And literally that was like 2021 going into 2022. And I was going into that year so excited. Like I had gotten prophetic words about the year. Like, what was some of the words? I go to this thing called Prophetic Sunday, which is like a Sunday service that is connected to a church that I'm connected to back home, where they will literally prophesy over people that are on the line. And I got a prophetic word going into 2022 that was like, I'm coming out. Like people kept getting that word, that sound for me, that song for me. So I was like, this is going to be a great year. When I was praying about 2022, I got the word ascension in my spirit. So I'm like, I'm going to new levels. I'm going to new levels in God, in my business, in content creation. Like I'm leveling up. I even had a friend prophesy to me that she believed that this year was going to be the last year of a season for me. So I was like, could it be my single season? Like, could a man be on the way? Like, so now I really got to level up, because I've always been the type of person who's like, I want to be really, really whole and really, really stable in my life before anybody else comes into my life. So I'm like, okay, like, let me get ready. Let me like get all my ducks in a row, get my life in a good place so that somebody else can come in just in case that's what God wants to do. You can't be assuming with prophetic words, but I'm thinking, let me just be ready just in case. You never know. I was excited. I had a great expectations for the year coming into it. And I had no idea that the words I'm coming out and ascension would have the meaning that they did in the end. Because what I really came out of this year was one of the worst seasons of my life. And what I really had to ascend through was like a season of so much mental anguish that I thought it would bury me. So, you just gotta, these words, man, they be having double meanings. I don't know. I wasn't ready. But how do I think this happened, or what happened? I'm sure y'all are like, was there some kind of tragedy? Did somebody die? Like, what did you go through that caused this to be such a difficult season? And when I tell y'all, I don't know. Like, when I tell y'all, it was so random. Has anybody ever had a mental health season that was like terrible, but for like no clear reason? because that's what I just came out of. And 0 out of 10 would not recommend. I did have some warnings in hindsight. I had some warnings from God about the fact that I was going to be going through that I might be going through a season like that, because last year in the summertime, I remember getting a word. I'm on like a prayer call with my mom and this lady from my church who's very prophetic. And I remember her saying something along the lines of, you know, we need to be praying for Brianna. Brianna, you need to be praying for yourself and praying consistently, because I just have a feeling that if you don't start praying consistently, that there's going to become a time where we need to be praying for you every day. And I kid you not, that word came to pass, because when I was going through this season later, my mom and Elaine, the lady who prophesied over me, were literally getting up at 7 a.m. to pray for me every day, because that's how bad my mental health was. So she said that last summer. Like, I heard it, but everything seemed fine at the time. Like, I was fine, life was fine, nothing bad was happening. So like, did I try to start praying more? Yeah, but did I have a lot of urgency around it? No, not really. Like, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna pray, but like nothing was wrong. And she even said, I just feel like some kind of anxiety or depression attack is gonna try to come against you. And when I tell y'all, she was more right than I ever wanted her to be. She was more right than I ever wanted her to be. So in any case, that was in 2021. I get into 2022. I have all these great expectations for the year. And I just feel like I suddenly got hit like a ton of bricks. And when I try to think about why I think this happened, I think about this. Recently, I heard a sermon from the pastor at my church, and he was talking about how the Israelites ended up in slavery in Egypt. And he talked about, and I always knew the Israelites were in slavery in Egypt, but I didn't necessarily remember how they got into slavery in Egypt. And the way they got into slavery in Egypt was really random. Like, they were living on the outskirts of Egypt. They were minding their business. They were doing well. They were growing as a people, and they had peace with the Egyptians, and it was all good. But randomly, a pharaoh was like, they're getting too strong. Like, if they keep growing and they keep getting this strong, they're going to overtake us, da 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 da. And so they literally decided to enslave them. And when I tell you, that's what I feel like the enemy did to me. Like, I felt like I was in my groove. I was doing online ministry. I was doing business. I was working my job and excelling in my career. And he was just like, she's getting too strong. Like, she's making an impact for the kingdom. Like, we gotta knock her down to size. And literally threw the book at me. All of a sudden, January, I've always been the type of person that has a lot of stuff on my plate. Anybody who knows me from high school, college, you name it, I was the one who was literally in a gazillion clubs, and I would have friends that say, how do you do so much so well? I don't know. And I'd be like, I don't know either, but this is just my MO. But suddenly in like late January, everything that I was doing just started to feel so overwhelming. Like, it was just like too much all of a sudden. Like, I had my job that I do full time in criminal justice reform, but then I had these other criminal justice, like juvenile justice roles. I'm on a board, I'm on a commission for that. I'm on the African American Alumni Committee for my master's program. I was helping to plan an event for that. Like, I was doing my business. I had consistent clients. I had like 5 students I was working with that year on their college applications and scholarships and things like that. Like, I just had a lot going on, but this was my norm. And yes, did I sometimes get stressed out by that? Yes, but not like this. Like, I started to feel like I was kind of drowning under the weight of like everything that I had going on. And I started to feel like I just couldn't stay on top of it. And it started to feel like during the weeks, I was just like barely keeping my head above water, feeling like I'm gonna drown. And then on the weekends, I would try to get some respite. I specifically remember in January going down to Miami for a weekend with my mom for my cousin's wedding, and like having a good time, getting dressed up, dancing and everything. And then getting back to Chicago and getting back into the groove of things and just being like, oh, it's back to reality. Can somebody please, I think I posted on Instagram, like, can somebody please take me through the weekend, take me back to the weekend, or just pray for God to get me through the week, because it started to feel like the weeks were for suffering and drowning, and the weekends were for trying to recover, only to get back on that hamster wheel again. So it was bad. And I just started to also feel really overwhelmed and indecisive. Like, I made a couple of decisions at the end of last year that I didn't feel like were good decisions. Like, I'm in a membership club. They have an annual plan. They have a monthly plan. I told myself I want to start on the annual plan before the new year, because the annual plan was the better deal. Right around the new year, they discontinued the annual plan before I did it. I was in so much regret about that decision. I'm like, why did I do that? There were so many resources I could have accessed in the annual plan. Like, like literally was ruminating about this decision. I think there was something else that I decided around that time and was like, just like really anxious about my decisions. I started to like every little decision, everything that I did that felt like it wasn't a good decision, or I don't know if it's a good decision. I was just anxious about it. If I made a decision, I was anxious that I did the wrong thing. And it basically started to turn into analysis paralysis, because all the goals and plans that I had for my YouTube and my business required me to make decisions. I was gonna finally do some rebranding. I literally paid somebody to do my website for my business. I don't even want to say how long ago because it's so embarrassing, but it was months, many months ago. And I haven't, done the copy. I haven't done the photo shoot. I haven't done the things I need to do. And literally, I also wanted to do some rebranding for Be Myself in God. I want to get my logo and everything a little more mature. I have these different goals. I want to consider maybe changing my colors a little bit. And I have a designer ready to do those things for me. But I was just suddenly like super indecisive about it. I'm like, I don't know what colors I want. Like, do I like my business colors? Do I not? I feel like they fit the vibe of my business, but are they like me? Do they fit me? For Bring Myself in God, well, I kind of like this pink, but do I want this mauve? Is this too dark? Is this too light? Like literally would try to make decisions, but then just backtrack and second guess everything. I was even working with a project manager who was trying to help me make decisions and progress in my goals and for my business that I met in a membership club that I'm in. And she was great. But I was all over the place because I would want to prioritize one thing, and then I would want to prioritize another thing, and then I couldn't make up my mind. We picked colors for my business, then I couldn't decide. I'm like, I don't know if I actually really like that. I just like couldn't move forward with anything. Like I was just so stuck over the smallest things, and it just started to make me feel so incompetent because I'm just like, why can't I make decisions? Like, why can't I make decisions? And how am I going to progress in life if I don't know how to make decisions? Not to mention, I wasn't just struggling with decision making. I was struggling with time management heavily. I'm in my job, and around March of this year, I got a promotion at work. I started to have more responsibility. And my new role required more deadlines, more doing this in a timely manner, doing that. Like, it was just a little bit more tight in terms of the requirements. And I felt like I was dropping the ball in that. And then not to mention, and then my job got really crazy, and I was having to work really long hours. I was working like, 20 hours overtime in like a 2-week period and like different things like that. And like, I was just not having a lot of work-life balance because I started to feel like, well, I don't even have time to rest. Like I started to feel like I have to work, and then I have to do stuff for my business and have to do this, that, and the third. And so I never felt like I had time to rest. I literally stopped eating consistently because I felt so busy that I felt like I didn't have time to cook and eat. Like I lost like 10 or 15 pounds. I'm starting to gain some of it back, but like I lost that weight, and people were looking at me like, what is going on? Like people that knew me and know my body type and all those different things are just like, you're getting smaller, like you seem stressed, Like I was not myself. It was affecting my mood. It was affecting my energy. Like I would still see people and hang out with people because I'm a social person. Even in my worst day, like I'm gonna wanna see people. But when I would hang out with people, I wasn't myself. I wasn't present. My mind was on different things that I was thinking about, whether it was decisions I was stressing about or just this overall feeling of being incompetent. Because between feeling like I couldn't manage my time and feeling like I couldn't make decisions, I pretty much reasoned that I was like pretty much bad at life and maybe would never be good at life. Because I'm like, if I can't manage time, if I can't make decisions, what more is time? What more is life than how you spend your time and the decisions you make? That literally determines your life. So I'm like, if I can't make decisions and I don't know how to manage my time, I'm gonna fail in life. I started to feel like, I've always wanted to be a wife and mother. One day I started to feel like I can't be somebody's wife. I can't be a mother. I can't even take care of myself. How can I be anything like that to anybody else? Like, I started to feel like I used to want to be an executive director of a nonprofit. I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, I can't even manage my like entry to mid-level position that requires me to stay on top of XYZ deadlines. Like, how can I ever succeed in life? Like, I just started to feel like a failure, like a complete failure. And anybody who knew me was like, what are you talking about? You're successful. You have this job. You have these degrees. But none of that mattered to me because I'm like, those are my accomplishments from the past. Right now, I feel like a failure. I feel like I can't manage my life. And if I can't manage my life now and I can't manage my life in the future, then it doesn't matter what I accomplished in the past, I'm gonna fail. Like I was struggling and I was literally having suicidal thoughts because I'm like, well, if I'm just gonna always feel like I'm failing at life, if I'm just gonna always feel like I can't manage my time, if I'm just always gonna feel stressed, then like, do I even wanna be here? You know, I was encouraged to be to be grateful and to have gratitude. And I was learning about people that were literally dying young. My cousin died at a young age when I was going through this. And another person that I knew from high school lost her sister who died at a young age. And I looked around and I woke up the next day after hearing about them in the same week, and I knew that what I was supposed to feel was grateful to be alive. But I felt jealous of the people that died, which like, it sounds so heavy. I hope y'all don't turn this video off because I know this is heavy, but like, this is how I felt. I was like, would I just be better if I died? Because, you know, I love Jesus. So as far as I know, I'm going to heaven when I die. So why would I want to stay here on earth and struggle through life and just feel like a failure all the time when I could just go? And I literally would have suicidal thoughts, and the only thing that would stop me from doing it truthfully was that I couldn't think of a method that was like not painful. I'm like, you know, I didn't want to just I didn't want to try to crash my car and just end up injured. I didn't want to, you know, try to drink something poisonous and just end up in the hospital. Like, this is so morbid, y'all, but this is where my mind was. And I just got to be honest, because I never know who else is thinking like this or going through what I went through. So I'm just going to tell y'all the truth. Like, and the only other thing that was keeping me from actually wanting to actually commit suicide was I didn't know if I would go to heaven if I committed suicide, which I should be secure in my salvation. For the most part, my theology is that people don't go to hell for committing a sin right before they die, like committing suicide. Like, my belief, generally speaking, is that like you would still go to heaven, but I just wasn't sure that I was sure. So I was like, I don't want to play with it. I don't want God to be like, you tried to cut your life short, I still had a plan for you. You ain't making it, which that's not really God's character, but like, I just wasn't sure. So I was like, I don't want to play with it. So that was that. But yeah, this is where my mind was, like, suicidal thoughts regularly depressed, regularly feeling incompetent. I was no longer like fun to be around, which made it hard. Like, I was still, you know, hang out with my friends, with my family, but I wasn't myself. I was a downer. I wasn't present. My mind was always somewhere else, and it could be over the smallest thing. I remember going on a Mother's Day trip with my mom in May to San Antonio, and on social media, it looks like I was having so much fun. That's the other thing. Like, don't let social media fool you, because anybody who watched my life through Instagram this year would think it was great. I was in Europe. I was on a cruise. I was in San Antonio with my mom. Y'all, I was struggling. I was in San Antonio on that trip with my mom, and I was literally at brunch with her at a place that I had picked for us to go to, while some of her other friends who were there in San Antonio were at the Airbnb, this really nice Airbnb with a pool. And I was like stressing because I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have had us go to brunch. We should be at the Airbnb with them. They're probably having a pool party. They're probably having so much fun. I messed it up. Like, I should have gotten up earlier and like made a plan for us. Like, literally the most random things, like indecision about day-to-day decisions, and then stressing about day-to-day decisions as if they really mattered that much. Like, this was where my head was in that trip to Europe, but constantly the whole time thinking about how much money I spent, and stressed that I spent too much money, that I shouldn't have done it, that I shouldn't have gone, all of that. Stressed, like, was not able to fully enjoy myself. I looked cute, it looked fun, but I was in and out of like lots of stressful thoughts that were tormenting me. I was showing up for my family, for my mom's, you know, graduation and her ordination, but was in my head about something that I said to a friend that I thought might have ruined our friendship, even though I was just overthinking and that wasn't the case. Like, I could go on and on about like all the ways that I was just like so not present in my life throughout like this year, and it was so tough. And what was hard about it was, you know, I would hang out with people and I would talk to them, but it didn't feel like there was anything that they could do or say to help me. Like, I would talk to people and people would try to encourage me, and it would make sense, but it would feel like I just felt like, oh, it's not gonna work, or oh, if I do that, it's not gonna make a difference. Or, you know, people would always ask like, well, what about therapy? Are you in therapy? And I was in therapy consistently. I didn't miss a week, but I was hitting a wall in therapy too. It wasn't helping. It didn't feel like I could process my anxieties a little bit there, but I felt like I was coming back to therapy with the same problems over and over and over again. So I promise y'all, this is gonna get better. Like, I just want you to really understand where I was, because we can't always just skip over the hard part and skip to the good part, even though that's a cute TikTok song. Can we skip to the good part? But like, for real, I can't skip over this. This was a months-long experience for me, and I just want y'all to know where I was so that you can understand where God brought me to. And then I'm gonna tell you, everything he taught me and everything like that. But we just have to get through the story. But we're almost done with this part. So stuff wasn't helping. Also, I was feeling very disconnected from God. Like I would try to spend time with God, but it would feel more like I was spending time with myself or my problems. Like I would go to journal and I would just be venting and word vomiting about the things that were stressing me out, the decisions that I couldn't settle on. And at the end of those times, I would feel like I had spent more time with my problems than with my God. And it also felt like my relationship with God became transactional because I was so desperate to feel better and to just like be better that's all I was talking to God about. I was just like, God, can you help me? God, can you help me make this decision? God, can you help me do this? God, can you help me do that? I wasn't just enjoying God anymore. I didn't really have it in me to worship God. I would try to play worship music, but I was so in my head that I wasn't really able to just worship God and actually be focused on God. Even when I would try to go to God with my decisions and pray to God, my anxieties were running so much in my head that like trying to pray and receive guidance from God on the things that I was dealing with wasn't working for me either. I literally, and this was so hard for me because I am a lover of God. I've been a lover of God for as long as I can remember. But like, I was like, do I even love God anymore? Like, I just feel like all I want from God is for him to fix this, but I don't feel like I love him. I don't feel like I care about serving him. I don't feel like I cared the same way I had previously about serving other people. Like, I was not myself, y'all. I was not myself. I was still able to do some things. I still had some clients that I was able to help with their resumes and cover letters, and people got, job offers off of things that I did for them, and all those different things. And I would get a burst of feeling accomplished. I was able to do speaking engagements for some young people, and I would get a burst of feeling accomplished. But that feeling of success and accomplishment became the exception rather than the rule for me. And my day-to-day was mostly feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and mildly depressed. Not clinically depressed, not like there's a chemical imbalance in my brain, but like mildly depressed. I would categorize the depression I experienced as more circumstantial because of like how anxious I was feeling, and also spiritual, because I absolutely believe this was a spiritual attack on me. And so this lasted for months on end. It was the worst season of my mental health that I can remember, and it was the longest that I can remember for a long time, and I didn't know whether it would end. But when I tell y'all that like suddenly, like just all of a sudden, I just got better, like I kid you not, like I just got better. Like it was miraculous. I remember when the turning point happened, but I couldn't explain to you why it happened. Like I remember when it happened because it was in August. I was in Atlanta. I was spending time with my best friend, Ariana, love you girl. And for the first time in a long time, I just felt like I was able to be present and just like enjoy someone else and enjoy myself and just like be present. We went to brunch, we talked. She's getting married next year. She went and showed me the venue where she was getting married, and I was able to just be there and be present and be like, oh my God, this is so exciting. This venue is so nice. Because like before, when I was going through the mental health struggles, like I could try to celebrate someone else and I would want to genuinely be happy for them, but I was so overwhelmed by my own anxieties and sadness that it was just hard for me to be present with other people. But I felt present with her. I felt excited about her life. I didn't feel like I was thinking about what's wrong with my life. It was just good. And honestly, I even felt good being around her after literally that weekend. I was like sexually assaulted. That's a whole different story, but like something terrible had happened to me literally earlier that morning. And that was part of the reason that I was even with her. But even despite that, I just like felt better. Like I felt like myself. And I would love to attribute it to seeing my best friend. And I do think that God used her and God used our time together, but I can't fully attribute it to her because I had seen her earlier in the year too. I was in Atlanta earlier in the year for something else, and I got together with her and we got a meal and we talked, and I went to her, and I was anxious and depressed when I went to her, and we talked, and she asked, this and that and gave advice, and I was still anxious and depressed when I left. So I can't even fully attribute it to her. I truly believe it was a miracle. I truly believe it was a God thing. And over the course of the next few months, like leading up to now, I just started to more and more feel like myself. Like I was worried that when my birthday came around that I wouldn't be even able to be present and have fun. I started to feel like as my birthday was approaching, I was starting to feel like I don't have anything to celebrate. I've stagnated. I haven't accomplished anything. like I'm here, but that's all I can say. And I can't even really take credit for being here because I wanted to not be here, but I just couldn't figure out a good way to do it and still make sure I was going to go to heaven and like survive and go to heaven. And so like, I was just like, what, like, I didn't know if I would be able to celebrate, have fun, none of that. But my birthday came around, and yes, I was still a little bit overly anxious with the planning, and I was still very indecisive to the point where everything was last minute. So to all my friends who were dealing with me texting last minute, not knowing what I was gonna do, that's normal for me anyway, but it was like worse this year. So shout out to y'all for sticking with me. But in any case, all that aside though, when I was out with my friends for my birthday, I had fun. I did karaoke, which I love to do for my birthday. I had so much fun. Like, I still had some things that I was like, I was very regretful about. I'm like, oh, I missed my reservation at this restaurant. Oh, I did this. Oh, I didn't plan this well when I was at home for my birthday. So I did have some times where I was sitting in anxiety and all those things like that. But for the most part, I had fun. And I started to feel like myself again, and like I could enjoy my friends and everything again. And like, I just got like progressively better and better over the last couple of months until now. I can literally say I'm back. Like, I saw this Ariel Fitzgerald, whatever her name is, TikTok, and she was like, are we back? Am I back? Am I back? And she was talking to her angel, am I back? God, am I back? And I'm moved, okay? I'm like, am I back? Like, did I survive that? Like, am I me again? Because like, I didn't know if I was ever gonna see me again. Like, but I'm back though? Glory, hallelujah, your girl is back. And I just want to share, and one thing I will say is that part of me wondered when I was getting better, I was like, am I just in denial? Like, am I just feeling better because I'm in denial about the fact that I'm still not on top of my life? I still don't have a plan to manage my time. I still don't know how I'm going to succeed in my goals. But like, after a while, like the feeling better was lasting so long that I'm like, no, I think I'm really back. So I'm back. I'm just claiming it, and this is what we rocking with. I'm back. And so I just want to share a few key lessons that I learned during this time. And it's not because I did everything right. I really believe that God snatched me out of depression. Like, I made a post in July, like, God, like, you know, that Usher thing that was going around, like, watch this. Like, I was like, me thinking that God is not going to be able to snatch me out of this depression. God, watch this. And when I tell y'all that's what God did, like, he snatched me out, so I cannot take credit for it. But I can tell you some things that I still learned in the process that I hope will help you if you're going through anything like what I just went through. So the first lesson that I want to share is take God at his word, both before your struggle season and during your struggle season. Because before this season started, I had a warning from God. I had a warning to pray more. I had a warning to guard myself more. And I kind of ignored it. I kind of didn't take it seriously. I'm like, depression, anxiety, me, I just didn't take it seriously. And next thing I knew, I was in the worst bout of depression and anxiety of my life. So if God speaks to you a warning, whether it's about a relationship, whether it's about how you're spending your time, whether it's about anything, it could be anything. But if you are blessed enough to have the voice of God active in your life, don't ignore it. Take God at his word, okay? But then it's not just about, listening to warnings. It's also about listening to what God is saying to you when you're in the midst of a struggle. So when I was in my struggle, I was going to these things called Prophetic Sunday, which I mentioned earlier in the video, and I was getting prophetic words literally every single month. It happens every first Sunday. If you want the plug, just hit me up. I'll send you the link. But I was getting these words, like they were telling me, God wants me to tell you that he is going to deliver you. Just don't compromise. God wants me to tell you that he's going to heal you, and you've been waiting for it, but he's going to deliver. There was even a time when God sent me the word victory. Like, I don't know, like somebody sent me a text message and it was like, God said you will have the victory. And then like I came across the song, I got the VICTORY. Like the word victory came across me like 3 times, and it just was like confirmation. I've got the victory, it's coming. And I grabbed it for a second, but then as soon as I started to feel overwhelmed with my circumstances again, I let it go. And I'm like, oh, it sounded nice. It sounded like God was about to deliver me, but actually I'm just still in this struggle bus, and this is not actually it. And so just take God at his word, y'all. Like, if he said it, trust that he will do it. And this is a matter of both hope and faith. Like, faith is trusting, and I got this from Darius Daniels in a sermon I heard today. Faith is trusting that God can do it. Hope is believing that he will do it. Today might be the day he's going to do it for me. So you really want to hold on to both faith and hope and taking God at his word in a season that you're going through. The next thing I'll say is show up with God and yourself and with others, even if it doesn't feel like nothing and nobody can help you, even if it feels like nothing or nobody can help you. Seek out the voice of God and the love of God in people and places. Like for me, what that looked like was continuing to go to church. When I was going through this, I felt so numb. And when I was in church, I would be in worship and I couldn't focus during worship. I was too anxious in my mind, but I still went and I still tried to sing the songs and I still tried to stand up and give God the praise that he was due. I would listen to the word and I might cognitively know that the word is for me or applies to me, but it didn't feel like it was penetrating my spirit. But I still went, I still took notes, I still tried to take it in. Even there would be times when the Spirit of God was moving in a church service and people are crying and getting deliverance and getting breakthroughs. And I know that the breakthrough that they're talking about is literally the breakthrough that I need. I remember being in the service and they were talking about we need to be free from the pressure. We need to know that God is our home. All these things. It's what I need, but I'm in the service feeling like it's skipping over me, feeling like the presence of God is touching everyone around me but me. But I would just implore you to keep going, keep showing up, because basically what I believe was happening was that in those places and spaces, seeds were being sown in my spirit. And even though they didn't manifest right at that time, I believe that they did contribute to me ultimately coming out on the other side. One particular word that I got that I know was for me, and I'm still reaping the harvest of that word at a church service was, one of the Bible verses that I was seeing a few times during this experience was when God said, when Jesus said to Peter, the Satan has desired to sift you like wheat, but I prayed for you that your faith would not fail. And when you are restored or when you return, strengthen your brothers. And I remember getting that word, and even the pastor was preaching and he was saying, some of you have been being counseled by the spirit of death, the spirit of hopelessness, but God is saying that, your faith won't fail and he's going to restore and all these different things. And it's like, I remember getting that word and I'm living in the harvest of that word that was a seed planted in me months ago. And what I will also say is don't just show up in the presence of God, show up in the presence of people. And this was hard for me because I felt like I was no fun to be around. I felt like I wasn't able to pour out the way that I would normally pour out. I felt like I wasn't able to be an encourager the way that I'm used to encouraging people. I didn't feel like I was really any fun. And it would have been easy for me to isolate and be like, well, I'm no fun to be around right now. But I would just go and I would hang out with people and I would just be honest about where I was. I'm not saying that I would soak up all the oxygen in the room. I would still listen to how they were doing and try to, be an encouragement. But I knew that I wasn't pouring out at my best, and I had to not be ashamed of myself because I wasn't able to pour out the way I normally did because my cup was empty. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't show up with people, because they can still encourage you, they can still talk to you, and they can still pray for you. Even when people couldn't say anything to encourage me because I didn't feel like I could be encouraged in that way, they were praying for me. I was showing up with people of God who were praying for me, and I know that their prayers are also part of the reason that I came out of this, because y'all, I wasn't praying for myself during this time. I was raised in a church where they taught us all the confessions. They taught us how to intercede. I know how to smack the devil upside the head in prayer, but I wasn't doing it. I was complacent. I was defeated. I was rolling over and taking it. And I needed people to stand in the gap for me. But how would they know to stand in the gap for me and pray for me if I wasn't showing up and telling them exactly where I was? So if you're going through something right now, show up with God, show up with people, show up even with yourself. Because that can plant the seeds for the breakthrough that you need. The next thing I'll say is my advice for this is don't complicate things. If you know that you're in a bad space, don't fall for the vices in your life that would make bad matters worse. For me, these vices are the men's, okay? I was, like for example, when I was out for my birthday, I was having fun, but I wasn't totally on the other side of, being all the way back to myself. And I met some guys when I was out. Like I met somebody who gave me their number. I met somebody else who looked really good, tall, muscular, light skin with dreads. Anyway, gave me his number, whatever. Somebody else gave me his number and told me to save it as my Lord. Now that's just an aside. Ain't that wild? I was definitely not going to hit him up. My Lord, bye. Anyway, met these guys. Thought about hitting them up, but I'm like, I'm not myself right now. I'm not in a good place. nothing about any interaction that I would have with these guys would be for in my best interest right now. And it would probably just add more muck to what I'm already going through. I even got on dating apps and, had people drop in not punchlines, pickup lines on me, and thinking about linking up with some of them. And some of them were on some stuff, and you could tell that they were out here trying to have a good old time. And I was just like, I'm abstinent, like I'm waiting till marriage. And so that is not good for me. And so I'm like, that would not be what I need, and it would just make bad matters worse. And so what I eventually did was I deleted the guys' numbers before I ever hit them up. I deleted the dating apps, because it's like when you're already going through a struggle, you don't want to complicate it. So whatever your vices are, whether it's weed, whether it's alcohol, whether it's entanglements with people, whatever it is that isn't your best self on a good day, definitely don't fall for it on a bad day, because it will literally just make bad matters worse. And so the last thing that I will say, or the second to last thing that I will say, is remember who you are, remember who God is, and remember that there is purpose still in your life. You are not what you're going through. You're not defined by what you're going through. I wasn't what I was going through. I felt depressed, but I'm not a depressed person. I'm not depression. I felt anxious, but I'm not anxious. Like, I felt indecisive, but I couldn't let myself be defined by indecision. I mean, I felt defined by it. And because I felt defined by it, I felt like I could never escape it. This is just who I am. This is what I'm stuck with in life. It's like digging a hole for yourself when you allow what you're experiencing to become like an identity to you. So even when you're going through whatever you're going through, if you can, however you can, try to separate your experience from your identity. You are not what you're going through. You are created by the Most High God. And what you should do is really remember who you were before you were going through this. Remember what your characteristics were. Remember who you are when you're at your best. And remember that is who you are. That is just even a picture of who you're meant to be. And don't let yourself be defined by your circumstances. But the next thing is also to remember who God is. Don't let who you understand God to be determined by what you're going through. Just because something that you're experiencing isn't good doesn't mean that God isn't good. And God is always good. All the good things come from God. All the bad things come from the devil. I know that it's not always that simple, and that God is sovereign, and that God has his will, and he has things that he allows sometimes. All that is felt well and good. But one thing is not up for debate. God is good. The Bible says that God is not evil. There is no evil in God. And so when we are tempted, we should not say that we are tempted by God, because God is not tempted by evil and doesn't tempt other people with evil. So the enemy might be throwing something at you, and you might have honestly allowed it yourself, because I felt like I was allowing it myself, and God may be allowing you to allow it, and he may have a plan to turn it around for your good, but he's not inflicting pain on you, and he is not the origin of bad things in this world. God made everything perfect. God created everything perfect. We dropped the ball in the fall, and now we're in this mess that God is turning around for our good and for the good of humanity and the good of the world. And if you want to hear more about the whole, why does God allow bad things conversation, I have a video called 5 Lessons from the Cross to the Coronavirus, because I know a lot of people were asking why God during the pandemic, and I kind of break down that conversation a little bit more. So I will link it. You should check it out. But the main thing to remember is that God is still good, even if what you're going through isn't good. And so don't let God be defined by your circumstances, just like you shouldn't be defined by it. And, just know that he still has great plans for you, and he still has purpose for you. This too shall pass. And it may not be because you prayed your way out. I know that it wasn't that for me. It's because God is good. When I was going through this, maybe a month or two before I came out of it, this woman from my church gave me a prophetic word where God said to me through her, Brianna, I commit to you that I will restore you because I love you. And now that I have been restored, I feel so loved, because I know that it was nobody but God that brought me through. Now I'm back to myself again. I'm back loving God again. I'm back singing songs to him. I'm back doing this and wanting to pour out and encourage others. you will get through this, and you will get through this not just as a conqueror, but as more than a conqueror. And what more than a conqueror means, that you will have victory in your own life, but then you will be a vessel of victory in other people's lives. Whatever you come through and overcome, you will be able to encourage other people through it, just like I hope that I'm doing right now for somebody else. And so just wait on it and just trust God, and remember, He is who He said He is, and you are who He says you are, and His purposes will prevail. And last but not least, I want to say that when God forgives you, forgive yourself. And when God restores you, trust Him to restore anything that you lost or even squandered, including time. And this was a hard one for me. Over the last couple of months, as I was coming out of whatever the heck I just was in, one of the things that I was struggling with was, well, maybe God is bringing me out, but what about all the time I just wasted? What about all the time I just lost? I was supposed to be focusing on my business. I was supposed to be focusing on growing my content. For all I knew, I was maybe supposed to already blow up as a content creator this year, and I just blew it. And now I missed an appointment with destiny, and I'm throwing off the timing of my life. And now I have other goals that I want to do to progress in my career and my education, and that's going to take some of my focus. And I'm like, well, how am I going to focus on this and move on to this when I have all this leftover stuff from the last season that I didn't finish? And so it's like I was feeling delivered, but I was feeling still grief, because I'm like, but I messed up, and now it's not it. How am I going to fix it? I don't know how I can fix it. But there was a couple Bible stories that I heard in the church service that God really used to speak to me. One was Elijah. Elijah was a prophet who literally called fire down from heaven and was doing the dang on thing. But then he was attacked by this woman, this queen named Jezebel, who chased him down, had him running for his life, had him wishing he was dead. I literally feel like I was experiencing this, like the same type of thing from this story. And after that happened, God was like, what are you doing here? Gave him some food, gave him a nap, allowed him to move on and move ahead. But what God had Elijah do next was actually anoint somebody else, Elisha, to take his place. So I always read that story as like a sad ending, because I'm like, well, like God did get him up and out of his pit, but did he pretty much disqualify himself because God pretty much had him bow out after that? And when I heard that story preached, though, it's like God gave me a different perspective on it. And the perspective was that it was an assignment for Elijah to anoint and to pour out a double portion of the anointing to Elisha. That was him completing his assignment. That wasn't him forfeiting his assignment. That was him completing what God had for him to do. Same thing with David and Saul and Samuel. So there was this prophet named Samuel. There was this king named Saul. Saul was disobedient, and David was going to be the new king because Saul was disobedient and God didn't want him to be king anymore. And Samuel was so busy, Samuel the prophet, who was told to go disqualify Saul and anoint David as the new king, he was crying over Saul. And God was like, why are you crying over him? I'm done with him. He's not king. Anoint David and move on. And at first, I read this story as a confirmation of my fears. Saul was, didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he was disqualified. And now David is taking his place. And now I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and now I'm disqualified, and somebody else is going to take my place. But God gave me a different perspective on that Bible verse. And he was like, no, you're not Saul. You're Samuel. You're Samuel, and your bad decisions and your past is Saul. And David is the future that I have for you. So rather than crying about Saul and crying about what is dead and gone and can't be taken back and didn't go the way it was supposed to, pray over and anoint David. Pray over and anoint and allow my power to flow into what I'm doing in your life now and what I'm doing in your life in the future. And the pastor that Sunday said, God is the God of your better. And I was just breaking down crying, because it's like God was telling me, like, I'm the God of your better. I'm taking you ahead. I'm taking you forward. You don't have to cry about the past and what you lost. And I heard those things in church. I heard them in Bible stories. I kept on getting words in church, or hearing the pastor say things in church like, God's plan still stands. I was in a service and my pastor said, God's plan for you is still the same. You're just taking a different route. You feel like there was a detour, but but the plan still stands. It's just a different route. So I'm getting all these encouragements, but they're not directly to me. And so I'm disqualifying myself. I'm like, well, maybe this was true for someone else, but is this true for me? But God, through this Elaine, man, get you an Elaine. Get you somebody in your life who's real prophetic and can speak a word from God straight to your heart. I got a word from Elaine without even telling her everything I was feeling. She told me that God said to me, yeah, you slowed down, but I'm going to restore you and get you so back on track that it's going to seem like you never missed a beat. And so then it was like, okay, well, I cannot disqualify myself anymore because I just got a word straight from the heart of God through a prophet to Brianna that says, yeah, you slowed down. We acknowledge that, but I'm about to get you right back on track. So, and listen, God is not a respecter of persons. If he can do it for me, he can do it for you. You're not Saul, just like I'm not Saul. The reason that Saul was disqualified is because he not only disobeyed God, but he refused to repent. As long as you are repentant for whatever you did that was not in line with the plan of God, and you are back submitted to God and you're ready to be used, God is ready to meet you right where you are and take you off to where he has for you to be. So I'm gonna just stop it right there. This was a lot of information. This was a long story. This was a lot of lessons, but I really hope that this blesses somebody. As a matter of fact, I hope this blesses a lot of people, and I hope that it blesses you deeply, because I'm so cognizant of the fact that I've been gone for since February. It's freaking November. I don't know, what is that? 8 months? I don't like math. It's a lot of time. And so I'm trying to make up for lost time, y'all. I'm back. I'm better. And I am not putting down what God gave me to do. And I want to encourage you the same thing. If you're going through a place where you feel like you put down what God gave you to do, something that Darius Daniels said that spoke to me was, we have to really distinguish between what did he say? Like a hobby? What did he say? I don't remember what the thing was, but he said basically between something that we just want to do, or an idea or an extracurricular activity, and a divine responsibility. And if God has given you something, he was like, if it's just a hobby or an extracurricular activity, then you're going to treat it like it's optional. But if it's a divine responsibility, it's something that God gave to you and it's not yours to put down. So that's how I feel about this YouTube channel. I didn't just come up with this. This was something that God put on my heart to do. I was scared to do it. I didn't want to be somebody's Christian role model because I'm far from perfect. But God had me start this channel to encourage other people. And so when I dropped this during the season that I was going through, I'm not shaming myself because I didn't have anything to pour out during this past season. But now that God has restored me, I'm ready to pour out, and I'm not going to treat this like an optional activity because it is a divine responsibility. And I'm committed to you and whoever's watching this and whoever I'm supposed to be reaching through this. And so I'm back, and I'm praying for you to have your comeback. And I'm praying that when you come back, that you will strengthen other people the same way that God is allowing me to do right now. And just know that God has not given up on you. God loves you. I love you. And your future is bright. So like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know if you're in a season like the one I just went through. Let me know if you've gone through a season like this. Which of these lessons, if any, really speak to you. I want to know that this is reaching somebody, because y'all, it's been so long, and I'm so ready to be back in alignment with God, and for God to be speaking to me and through all of this to our hearts, because God is moving and I just want to be a part of it, and I want you to be a part of it too. So like, share, comment, subscribe, all the things, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.